Since the ADA was passed in 1990, we have worked to make our world as accessible as possible. All public buildings today are required to have handicap-accessible parking, automatic doors, and access to elevators or ramps. But how do we make our online world equally as accessible? The web is a primarily visual medium, which can be a huge challenge for someone with limited sight. There are also considerations to be made for those who struggle with reading text, maintaining focus, or physically using a mouse or keyboard. The goal of web accessibility is to make the internet available to all people, regardless of ableness. What does it mean to be accessible? One of the most important features is to make a website or web tool legible for a screen reader, which includes alternate text for any visual elements, as well as clear content organization. Other useful inclusions are changeable text size and font type, sufficient color contrast, and minimizing moving elements. Our world has become increasingly dependent on the internet to function. We rely on the internet for communication, business transactions, education, and more. For websites to remain inaccessible to the 285 million blind or visually impaired individuals across the globe is an ethical crisis. In 2018, there were over 2,250 lawsuits related to website accessibility filed in the US alone. This is nearly triple the number of similar lawsuits filed in 2017. This reflects the growing support for web-accessible sites as a legal right.
The foremost legal argument for web accessibility relies on Title III of the ADA, which prohibits discrimination on the basis of disability in any places of public accommodation. Websites are not mentioned in the official wording, which only references physical locations. However, the public nature of the web allows lawyers to argue Title III applies to websites. As mentioned, the lack of web-specific laws has not discouraged individuals from filing lawsuits. The most public case yet occurred in 2019 when a blind customer sued Domino's for having a website that did not support screen readers. The U.S. District Court ruled in favor of the blind man, as did the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals. Finally, the Supreme Court publicly supported the application of the ADA to the web by refusing to hear Domino's appeal. Domino's primary argument for why they should not be held accountable was the lack of clear government standards for web accessibility. In this area, Domino's is correct. The most widely accepted web accessibility standard is the WCAG, which was created by the World Wide Web Consortium and is not part of U.S. law. This lack of web-specific ruling has not been neglected. In 2010, the Justice Department announced a notice of proposed rulemaking to include wording in Title III of the ADA that was specific to accessibility of web information and services. However, in 2017, the Trump administration withdrew the notice. It is also worth pointing out that there is no specific government watchdog organization. The only way that web accessibility is enforced is for private individuals to sue, which can be time-consuming and costly for all parties involved.
Faced with unclear legal standards and the threats of lawsuits, companies are burdened with the task of coming up with technical solutions for issues of accessibility. There are a growing number of tools and strategies that are becoming standards of practice for web development. The most widely accepted standard of web accessibility for companies to pass is the WCAG compliance. The WCAG has four main pillars of accessibility: perceivable, operable, understandable, and robust. The combined implementation of these pillars is designed to accommodate for a wide range of disabilities, including blindness, deafness, learning disabilities, movement disabilities, photosensitivity, and more. In order to have a website that is perceivable, there must be text alternatives for any non-text content, including CAPTCHA tests, images, and visual information. At the same time, it should indicate to assistive technologies what can be ignored as visual formatting that is irrelevant. Color cannot be the only means of conveying meaning and must pass mathematical contrast calculations as well. The core of operable is that all content is accessible using a keyboard and does not require any specific timings for those keystrokes. Moving, blinking, scrolling, or auto-updating information should have speed controls or a pause button. To be understandable according to the WCAG standards, the content needs to be readable. This includes programmatically indicating the language of the content, providing a way to expand or define abbreviations and complex words, including clear indications of expected user input and explanations of any errors detected in the user input, which would make submissions reversible.
To make a website robust, the content must be made interpretable by a wide variety of user agents, including assistive technology. This is possible by writing valid HTML with no errors and including content with semantically meaningful tags. The technical execution of WCAG compliance can be a demanding task, especially for a website that was not built with accessibility in mind. Luckily, there exist a growing number of solutions and tools that companies can use to implement accessibility. HTML5 introduced more meaningful tags, which are the tools used for organizing information in HTML. Now, instead of all content being labeled as section or div, there are tags to indicate headings, navigation, bodies, paragraphs, footers, asides, and more. This helps assistive tech parse the content much better. Even more functionality for assistive technology can be achieved with JavaScript libraries and APIs. Now that the majority of screen readers are JavaScript enabled, this is a popular solution. The Duke University homepage uses the ARIA library, which has specific objects and functions that implement the 4 pillars of the WCAG. There are many third-party services that can assist companies in making their websites WCAG compliant. Companies such as McDonald's, Coca-Cola, Timberland, Groupon, and many others use third parties to help keep their websites accessible. Thanks for listening. We hope you have learned something new about the issue of web accessibility standards.